This one was requested by Scott's Lass. It takes us somewhere that we haven't been for a long while. That's right, we're going up to Scotland. But before we do, let's do disclaimers. This is a true crime story. It's real. The people that are in it are real, and they have real families. So although I do want you to share it and I do want you to comment, please be a little bit sensitive as you do so. In November 1995, Bennylyn Burke was born in the Philippines. Then in 2015, she met her to-be husband on a dating site. Then another 3 years on, she married him in the Philippines. In the interest of transparency, when they got married, he was 60-year-old and she was only 23 years old. He was a landlord in the UK. A month after they'd got married, a daughter was born, called Jellica. She then moved to Bristol in the UK, and that was on Jellica's first birthday in August 2019. However, after only a couple of months, their relationship started to break down. Bennylyn and her husband separated. Bennylyn were living in Staple Hill in Bristol, but she moved to Kingswood in South Gloucestershire in 2020, and that was obviously with Jellica. While there, she worked in a care home for a few months. She sold car vacuum cleaners online. She was a stay-at-home mom later on, but she were trying, and she still wanted companionship. So Bennylyn was online looking for love, and it was on the website Filipino Cupid where she met Andrew Innes. Born in June 1970, Andrew attended Alva Academy. He then went on to study at Aberdeen University before working in computer gaming for several firms in Dundee, which is Scotland. Unbeknown to Bennylyn, Andrew was actually on 34 different dating sites. And I think that's extreme. You might be thinking it's okay. You might be thinking he's just desperate. But while he was on these dating sites, he was actually collecting and harvesting the data. He was putting the data of all these women into a spreadsheet and then ranking them. He ranked them on their age, weight, height, and if they had any children. The top scorers were ladies that were between mid to late 20s and that did have children. Although I should point out here, it wasn't only women with children that he spoke to. It's now 2021. Bennylyn's 25 and Jellica is 2. Oh, and did I mention that Bennylyn is really short? Yeah, she's only 4'6", weighing at 5 stone 7 pound. She is a really small and fairly light lady. During their initial chats, Andrew suggested that Bennylyn would come and work with him in Dundee. He wanted her to be a community relations manager, and he was promising to pay her £1,000 a month. She refused that offer, saying that she likes it where she is and she'd much rather work from home. Bearing in mind, Bristol, where she's living, to Dundee is 440 miles. He did also ask for intimate photos, and yet again, she refused. Regardless of all that, at some point they did decide to meet up, and they'd meet in Bristol. Now, unbeknown to Bennylyn, on the 15th of February 2021, just 3 days before they'd meet, Andrew had actually been making some dodgy search terms. He googled, what is chloroform used for? And he also looked up, he was researching underfloor storage. Now, on the 18th of February 2021, the UK had movement restrictions set by the government. Despite that, Andrew travelled the 440 miles from Dundee down to Bristol. Bennylyn has a sister that still lives in the Philippines, and despite the 8-hour time gap, they still have a video call every single day, or at least text. Now, she thinks that Bennylyn took pity on Andrew. He drove all this way, and she was quite interested in seeing Scotland, so she agreed to travel back to Dundee with Andrew. While on the video call, Bennylyn's sister did talk to Andrew, she saw him, and she also confirmed that Jellica and another child was in the car. They also didn't take any belongings with them. They hadn't packed for overnight staying, so everybody thinks their intention were to go down and then spend the night there, then the next day return back down to Bristol. Sure enough, they got back to Andrews that evening. The following day, they spent around Dundee, they were sightseeing, they went to see the V&A, the Camperdown Park. The day after that, Bennylyn talked to her sister on video call again. She showed her around Andrew's house and they had a good old chat. She showed her everything, but they didn't realise that that was the last time they'd ever talked to each other. The next day, her sister grew really concerned that she weren't replying to her messages. It were really out of character of Bennylyn. Then on Monday, the 22nd of February 2021, she received a message from Andrew. In this message, it basically explained that Bennylyn, Jellica and the other child had gone to Glasgow. They'd met up with another man that she'd met online, and he were a teacher. He also added that Bennylyn had wanted to go to this guy's house to hide. He said that Jellica's dad was trying to get custody, and he was also trying to get Bennylyn deported. He reassured her that, look, Bennylyn is going to be safe in Glasgow, and he also says, look, I've told her to get rid of her mobile phone if she doesn't want the authorities to find her. And at this point, her sister's pleading to speak to her. So Andrew replies, I expect she will get in touch with you once she gets settled down. She even asked him, sir, can you tell me my sister is alive? To that he replied, Scotland is a peaceful country. We don't have much crime at all. Please try not to worry. I'm sure your sister is perfectly safe. 4 days on, she messaged again. Hi, hello sir. What happened to my sister? He responded, it's a little bit of a long story, but don't worry, she's perfectly fine. But she relented. What happened to my sister? Sir, please tell me. He went on to say that he needs to draw a line under this, and he needed to get on with his life. He said that he was going to delete everything from his phone and his computer, not just to protect myself, but also to protect her, so the police can't find her if they search my house. But her sister weren't giving up. She asked him to send a video of her so she knew she was okay. And he did send a video, but it was an old video. She then said, I hope we chat again, sir. And he replied, maybe one day, once the dust has settled. Then on the 1st of March 2021, Bennylyn, Jellica and the other were reported missing after they missed an appointment. That's 2 weeks since they left their home. And if you're wondering who this other person is, this other child is, I have no idea. I have practically no information. Their identity is concealed because they're only 7 and they did survive. And I'm fine with not having or giving that information. However, that does also mean I have no idea who they are. Meaning I don't know if it's Bennylyn's daughter or not. Some sources say it is Bennylyn's other daughter. Other sources just refer to it as another child. And I'm not going to try and find out because that would be illegal. So I'm just going to refer to them as C from here on out. 2 days after they were reported missing, on the 3rd of March 2021, Avon and Somerset police launched an urgent search to track them down. They said that officers were growing increasingly concerned for all 3 of them and they were desperate for any information. Now, for you lot that aren't in the UK, Avon and Somerset is in England, south of England. So they're looking into it and they find that Bennylyn might have been in Dundee the previous week. So they were looking around for any information on how she might have got to Dundee, and they did find a car that, despite travel restrictions, had travelled from Dundee to Bristol and then back to Dundee. So another 2 days on, after being contacted by Avon and Somerset police, local police arrived at 21 Troon Avenue at 20 minutes past 3 in the afternoon on Friday the 5th of March. Police saw that this car that had been identified making this journey was sat on this driveway, the driveway of Andrew Innes. So they went and knocked on the door. But Andrew stuck to his story. He claimed that, yeah, alright, I picked him up from Bristol and I brought him up to Dundee, but now they're in Glasgow. He said that he dropped him off at Old Inns Calf in Unbeknown, Lancashire, on February the 28th, and he'd left them with an unknown male, and he hadn't had any contact with them since. He also refused to let the police into the house. He claimed that he was self-isolating and that his daughter had just got out of the bath. However, they then saw C fully clothed in the house. So noticing there was something quite not right about this entire thing, and this guy is the only suspect so far, so look, we've got to come in this house, there's something wrong. They did get into the house, and they later described the house as in complete disarray. The kitchen units had been removed, and there were no cooker, and all the pots and pans were on the stairs. At this point, Andrew's still insisting that C is my daughter, but police still smelt a rat. So they took C to one side and asked, is this your dad? And obviously she said, no, not at all. Once that this had come out, the police asked Andrew where Bennylyn was. And he said, I killed her. She's under the floor. We got into a fight and I killed her. They asked where Jellica was and he replied, under the floor with the mom. I cannot look after C, and C was screaming. He also said, it's going to take you some time. They're about 3 or 4 foot down. Andrew was then arrested and took for questioning. The next day, the 6th of March 2021, it was 7:45 at night when the police announced that the investigation was now a murder investigation. Not only that, but Andrew Innes had been charged with the deaths of Bennylyn and Jellica. To make matters even more chilling, Andrew later told the jury that if the police hadn't turned up when they had, if it had come 24 hours later, it could have been too late. C could have already been dead. C later told the police that Andrew had been telling her that Bennylyn was in hospital and Jellica was in Bristol, which is absolutely appalling. This poor girl, which probably already feels abandoned in this strange place, is now going to definitely feel abandoned. Why is Jellica at home while I'm not? With Andrew in police custody and C safe, the search of Andrew's 21 Troon Avenue began. 3 days after his arrest, on the 8th of March 2021, Andrew appeared at Dundee Sheriff Court accused of murder. It's at this point that they allege that Andrew struck Bennylyn with a hammer or similar instrument. They don't know what instrument and they don't know where Bennylyn is. This, up to this very second, has left me quite confused to how they got to that, but if you listen carefully, it is quite obvious how they knew that. Either which way, he made no plea that day. It wasn't for another 10 days, almost 2 weeks after his arrest. On the 18th of March, the police discovered the bodies of Bennylyn Burke, 25-year-old, and a 2-year-old daughter, Jellica. They were indeed under the kitchen floor in Andrew's house. On the 28th of September 2021, Andrew faced the charges as he appeared by video link to the High Court in Glasgow. It was now clear that Andrew had stabbed Bennylyn with the knife, and then he'd beat her with both the knife handle and with a hammer. The indictment also claimed that he'd murdered Jellica. It was stated as asphyxiate her by means unknown. They wasn't the only two charges though. It was also facing charges of attempting to defeat the ends of justice, which included wrapping Bennylyn's body in a rubber bag, blanket and tarpaulin, and then concealing the corpse in concrete under the kitchen floor. Jellica's body is also said to have been found there, and 2 sources that are found said that she was naked. He was also charged with assaulting, raping and attempting to rape C while she was detained against her will in his house. All of these charges happened between the 20th of February and the 5th of March. Again, at this hearing, there was no plea. And at this point, Andrew still hasn't got a lawyer acting on his behalf. But the nature of these charges means he has to have legal representation for any possible trial. And let's face it, a trial is certain. Now, you see, in the UK, we have legal aid. This basically means if you have low income and you have next to no assets, then the state will fork the bill for your legal representation because everybody has a right to be represented. And Andrew had applied for legal aid, but because of his assets, it was declined. So he either just didn't bother or he hadn't had the time to appoint a lawyer. So at the hearing, he was appointed a lawyer. Then everything went quiet for the next 7 months. Then on the 12th of April, the court case went to the High Court in Glasgow. Andrew's presence had been excused, so on his behalf, his new lawyer said that Andrew pleads not guilty. It went on to state that a number of psychological and psychiatric investigations had been carried out on Andrew since the previous hearing in September. The situation is the necessary defence inquiries have each produced further inquiries that need to be carried out. However, it was mutually agreed that the trial date could be fixed. So the trial date was set. It was due to start on the 30th of January 2023 in Edinburgh. That's 5 weeks short of 2 years since he was first arrested. Another hearing was planned to take place in August, but that didn't occur until the 13th of October 2022. And you'll never guess what happened at that hearing. Go on, have a guess. Yes, Andrew's legal team spoke of claiming diminished responsibility. So, let's fly through, let's get to the court case in January and get this case started. So it was the 31st of January 2023. Andrew did admit to killing Bennylyn and Jellica, but he denied murder, and he denied all the other charges. He was claiming absence of responsibility and diminished responsibility. You see, Andrew had been diagnosed with having autism spectrum disorder, and then on the 1st of February 2021, he was admitted to Ninewells Hospital in Dundee with severe intermittent abdominal pain. So while he's in this hospital, they have a look at him and they diagnose him with Crohn's disease. If you don't know what that is, it's a disease that attacks your immune system. For this, he was prescribed prednisolone. If you don't know, that is apparently a steroid medication. Let's bear in mind, he got this medication 2.5 weeks before he picked up Bennylyn. Now, Andrew and his lawyer decided that what we could do was say that these two conditions, or a claim that he'd been overdosing on the steroids, gave him grounds of diminished responsibility. Yeah, to be honest, this entire case against him was super strong. I don't think there was a single second during this case that casted any doubt over his guilt. It was said that he removed kitchen units and flooring from the kitchen and put them into a skip. And it was also claimed that Andrew had the intention of fleeing his home with C and harbouring her elsewhere. The post-mortem revealed that Bennylyn, who let's not forget is a small and fairly light woman, was stabbed to the chest, and that wound was 158 millimeters deep. That's nearly 16 centimeters. She also had head injuries. The pathologist found the combined effects of internal bleeding and the injuries to her head caused her death. The jury also heard that Bennylyn had no injuries of self-defense. She had no marks that suggested that she tried to deflect or block these blows with his hammer. So then you think, all right, well, maybe she's restrained. But no, again, there was no restraint marks either. So I think that's a little bit weird, especially when it comes to Andrew's statement, which we'll see in a minute. As I said earlier, Jellica had been found to be asphyxiated by means unknown, but the examination did reveal that there had been pressure on her mouth and on her neck. On the 1st of February 2023, the court was closed to the public. This is because C had done a full video interview of all the evidence. She'd become a key witness, and she documented all this in a video interview, and it was being played to court. Now, obviously, I have filtered a lot of information out here. There is so many reasons why I've done that, and if you've got an issue with that, then go and see a doctor. Do not tell me in the comments that you want all the details. Not going to happen, you'll be blocked. C testified that he tied rope to the door handles inside the house to prevent them from opening, and he was detaining her against her will. There was also other restraints used at various times. The jury were told there was evidence that a swab from C revealed that she had chlamydia, and Andrew had also been tested in May, and that showed he also had chlamydia. Now let's face it, regardless of any allegations, he's guilty. It was claimed that on various occasions between the 20th of February 2021 and the 5th of March 2021, he sexually assaulted her and raped her. And those kind of assaults weren't just aimed at C. Jellica was also a victim. C explained to the interviewer that Andrew pretended Jellica was playing hide and seek when he'd killed her. When asked where the murders took place, C said, "I don't know where. I just know looking in the bathroom and he shut the door on me. Andrew shut the door at me, so it must be in the bathroom." From everything that I've read, C was incredibly brave. She gave a full account of everything that she knew and everything that happened. After each incident of assault, she said that Andrew gave her money. He called these incidents jobs, and it even gave C and Jellica a purse to keep the savings in. C said, "The first job, Jellica was there. Jellica was with me. Then the rest of the jobs, Jellica was dead." She added that after that first incident, they were both given £2.10. C also described Andrew striking Bennylyn with the hammer. She saw it, and she said that Bennylyn was trying to say something, but she couldn't hear what. A forensic scientist took to the stand and said that Andrew's DNA was found on C's pyjama bottoms. Additionally, C's DNA and Bennylyn's DNA was found on his dressing gown. A condom was also found to have Jellica's and Andrew's DNA on. But to that, Andrew's defence said, look, there could be many explanations to how DNA gets places, including cross-contamination from touching other surfaces. And the prosecution did agree with that. And I suppose it is true, but let's face it, all the DNA evidence I've got here, it's pretty damning. The defence also pointed out that it couldn't be determined whether the DNA were put in them places at the same time or at separate times. Basically, he's trying to weaken that DNA evidence. And it has worked, I suppose. He is right. But at the same point, let's face it, we're all thinking, you're guilty of that. The last thing we're going to hear from C, and it's the bit that rips my heart out more than anything. I should have saved them, but I couldn't because I didn't know what was happening. Detective Constable Hardy told the court that he'd asked Andrew how long Bennylyn had been in the kitchen floor. Andrew apparently replied, "Last Friday she came up. We were going to spend the weekend together. I saw she'd been chatting to about 50 men on her phone, so it was either Monday or Tuesday. It took me a while to get through the concrete." He apparently also said, "I never touched the girl." The jury were also shown some CCTV footage that showed Andrew in a B&Q, which is a DIY store, and he was buying a hammer. Then it was Andrew's time to give his defence. It's his time to tell everybody what actually happened. He said that he'd gone out to get some petrol, but he somehow ended up at B&Q and he bought an hammer. When he got back to the house, Bennylyn was preparing food. At that time, he was thinking crazy things and he attacked her. He did so because she resembled two women who'd betrayed him. The two women that she apparently resembled was, one, his estranged wife, and two, another partner that had broke up with him via text. He actually said something along the lines of, from the neck down, Bennylyn was similar to my wife, from the head up, she was like the other woman. I started to think about all the spiteful stuff my wife did to me. I got angry. I got really angry. I have never got so angry before. There's an expression about your blood boiling. There was a physical sensation. I started to think some very crazy things. I thought that the woman in front of me was some kind of hybrid. I became apocalyptically angry. I picked up the hammer and hit her over the back of the head. I was furious. I started to think some crazy things. It's insane. He said after a struggle on the kitchen floor, he went up to his office and got a samurai sword. My memories are fragmented. I don't remember all of it. I remember wrestling on the kitchen floor. I had a samurai sword in my office. And I remember thinking, right, I'll get my samurai sword. So I went into my office and she started chasing me. I remember the blade going in once. He said he then kept hitting her until she stopped moving. He also said that while she was chasing him, she apparently had a sushi knife and she was trying to stab him with it. I don't know. I don't believe it either which way. When questioned about killing Jellica, he said his memory weren't great, but he believed it happened 3 days after killing Bennylyn. He said they'd been playing hide and seek. They were upstairs and she ran towards an electrical transformer. If she'd touched that wire, she would have exploded. I had to stop her. She kept trying to get it. She wanted to go to her mom. I was detached from reality. I had no emotional response. It seemed logical to me to put her with her mom. As we said earlier, he did blame his steroid medication for his behaviour. He told the jury about his diagnosis of autism, he told them about the Crohn's disease, and he explained that he'd taken 2 weekly doses of the steroid medication. Now, he was supposed to be taking 40 milligram of the steroid each day, but he was apparently taking higher doses than he was prescribed. He said that the night before he attacked Bennylyn, he hadn't slept, and the day that he killed her was the day that he was supposed to be taking her home. When asked, well, why did you kill her? He said, because I was insane. As a result of the steroids, it was ridiculous that I'd return with an hammer when I went out for petrol. Talking about the samurai sword, he said that it was not a useful weapon, and that if this was premeditated in any way, it would have been way cleaner. At some point, he even told the court that Bennylyn and Jellica wasn't buried in concrete. I dug them a respectful grave and gave them a Christian burial, and then replaced the floor. That's all I did. At the end of the week, the last witness was a forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Cowan. He'd met with Andrew 8 times since his arrest, and he refuted that Andrew suffered steroid-induced psychosis. He also pointed out to the court that Andrew had changed his defence numerous times. For example, he told one psychiatrist that Bennylyn had attacked him, but on another occasion, he said that he had a voice inside his head saying, I think the other guy wanted me to get angry and asked me to kill her. I said, don't be stupid. She's done nothing wrong. However, Dr. Cowan agreed that it wasn't really possible to rule out steroid-induced psychosis, but he did say it was extremely unlikely, concluding there was no evidence to support his diminished responsibility defence. In my opinion, on balance, I don't think there was evidence he was impaired. He said he acted in self-defence from attack. He then spoke of an internal monologue, with a voice of a kind of identity that was advising him to hurt the woman, and he was saying she has done nothing wrong. It's really difficult to know for sure the symptoms, if any, Mr. Innes had at this time. It's clear that he held resentment towards his ex-partners, and the lady in front of him reminded him of these ladies, and he became uncontrollably angry at her. When Andrew's defence asked Dr. Cowan if Andrew's behaviour showed that Andrew was psychotic, he said, there is logic in his thought process, so I don't necessarily think it's indicative of somebody who is psychotic. The court also heard that following Bennylyn's murder, Andrew continued to stick to his routines. So Andrew's defence asked Mr. Cowan, look, can somebody that's psychotic possibly carry on the normal routine and go about their life without anybody noticing that they're not very well? Dr. Cowan replied, if someone is so thoroughly psychotic that they were exhibiting hallucinations and delusions, and that they were acting so erratically and disordered that they were killing people, then no, they would not be going around doing their day-to-day business without anybody noticing. It does not fit in with the account of florid psychosis. It does not fit in with the crime. He added that he didn't think that Andrew was unable to reason by mental disorder to appreciate the nature of wrongfulness of his conduct. So it was his view that if Andrew had found to have committed these crimes, his defence of diminished responsibility weren't supported. I just want to say here, I wouldn't want this lawyer supporting me. He seems to ask questions that get you into trouble. Ultimately, Dr. Cowan did admit that psychosis is a rare side effect of the medication that Andrew was on, but there was no evidence to be specific, adding that within the last year, no patient in NHS Teesside had suffered an episode of steroid-induced psychosis, and that most of his colleagues had never seen a case in their entire careers. He spoke about when he met Andrew in prison in September 2021. He spoke to some family, and there was a relative perhaps had steroid-induced psychosis in a hospital admission. That was the first time he became aware of this phenomenon, and thought it perhaps fit what happened to him. Dr. Cowan also told the jury that at one point he claimed that he felt psychotic when he killed Bennylyn, but not Jellica, and then later on he claimed to feel psychotic during both murders. So after a 5-day trial at the High Court in Edinburgh, it took the jury just 2 hours and 26 minutes to reach a verdict. 52-year-old Andrew Innes was found guilty of murdering 25-year-old Bennylyn Burke, as well as her daughter, Jellica. He was also found guilty of abusing Jellica and C, as well as organised and determined, albeit ultimately futile, attempt to conceal evidence of what you had done in order to evade justice. The mitigating factors to his sentencing was his age, he's got no previous convictions, he's got a good history of employment, a serious physical condition which causes considerable difficulties, and the reports from the psychologists and the psychiatrists. Andrew Innes was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 36 years. Personally, I don't think that's anywhere near long enough. However, he obviously disagrees, because on the 17th of February, the court received a notice of his intention to appeal the conviction. A statement from Bennylyn's family said, "Bennylyn had bright ideas and big dreams. She bravely left home to seek a better future in a country far away. Instead, she found the worst cruelty we could ever imagine at the hands of someone she trusted. We shall be forever haunted by what happened to her in this far-off place such a long way from us, her family. In the Philippines, poor families like ours very often have daughters and sisters who seek to fulfill their dreams for a better future abroad. Never do we imagine it will end in such terror and horror. We cannot drive from our minds what happened to her and what happened to Jellica, or the fear they must have felt after experiencing violence from Andrew Innes. A big part of our family has been torn from us. We shall never see Bennylyn and Jellica again. We shall never know our beloved Jellica. We pray for the child who suffered the cruelty of Andrew Innes. We are happy that she's been cared for and recovering from her trauma. Women and girls must be protected from predators like Andrew Innes. There is nothing that can restore Bennylyn and Jellica to us. But the jury's guilty verdict for murder provides some comfort to our family and friends, and brings us joy for Bennylyn and Jellica." That is all the information I've got for you. I hate covering this type of case, if nothing else, because I'm a dad, and it really is horrific, and he really is a monster. But it was requested, and what type of true crime am I? What type of true crimer am I if I don't cover the worst cases? So I've done it, it's fair, it's done. I do apologise if the delivery isn't the best, as well as my brain being absolutely spaced out because of having to research this for the last week. I've also got a bit of a cold, so I'm very tired and stuff as well. Someone did mention in an article, I don't know if it were a police officer or something, that they said they wouldn't be surprised if these weren't the first victims of Andrew. And before I even saw anything like that, my brain were making connections. Without thinking, it just jumped into my head, Peter Tobin. It really wouldn't surprise me if it ever comes out that Andrew has murdered more people. It really does seem like the character, everything about him fits the characteristics of it. So I really do hope people are looking into that. I hope people are keeping him in mind for other unsolved cases and any that might come about in the future. Because like I said, it really wouldn't surprise me. I'm now going to go and lay down in a dark room and try and cleanse my brain. But I do need to make a few announcements before, and many of you over the last 8 months have been asking for me to start members or Patreon. and I've always said no. But I did say that when I got to 10k, I'd reconsider it. And then people have been asking again this week, so I've considered it and I've allowed it. Members can now join for £1 on the channel. You get a mention at the end of the video, which you're going to see in a minute. You also get special emojis. But basically the entire point of Patreon and memberships is to offer support, show support. I've always been uncomfortable with the idea, but someone once said it's nothing other than people wanting to show support and appreciation. So if you do want to become a member of Patreon, feel free. If you don't, I don't mind. As far as I'm concerned, I appreciate you all just as much. You're all invaluable to me, and I'm so grateful for all your support. On that being said, if you do want to buy a hoodie, which are now available, check the description for the link. If you do want to buy one, it's worth buying Patreon or members anyway, because I'm giving them a discount to get their money back for the memberships. So basically, I think YouTube's like a £1 members fee. So I'm going to give them like a 4 or 5% discount to get the membership money back. So you essentially, if you're buying a hoodie, you're going to get a month worth of membership or Patreon for free. So it is worth doing that. The hoodies are on sale now. They'll only be on sale for 2 weeks. They are limited edition. After that 2 weeks, they'll never be sold again. The date that they stop being sold, I will announce next week. Check out the community feed. Like I said, the link is in the description. There is also an option to personalise the hoodie and have your name on the front of the hoodie. That's it. We're all done. I'm now going to go and try and fix my brain. Until next week, guys. Bye.